The Nephilim sightings are going to start soon.
Consciousness has been enslaved.
Your consciousness does not need your physical body to survive.
It's the thing that's necessary. It has to be there. It's the coding that projects this world we currently live in.
He said, I want you to read the Bible.
We got reptilians on just outside of our frequency zone.
Six-dimensional beings, the ancient builder race.
Ideas are the highest form of intelligence, and that leads you to truth and clarity.
The Nephilim sightings are going to start soon.
Conspiracy and chill.
There's obviously aliens. Our galaxy is insanely huge. We're just one planet.
They would have needed a minimum of 6 feet of lead shielding in order to get through the 25,000-mile thick Van Allen radiation belt.
This is real. They really did fake the moon landing.
The world is infinitely older than that. And I mean the world with human beings in it.
Skull and Bones is like one of the villains in the Legion of Doom.
He said, I want you to read the Bible.
The biblical flood, the Tartaria mud flood.
Conspiracy and chill.
The Nephilim sightings are going to start soon.
The bull god Baal.
He said, I want you to read the Bible. There's magnets in the basketballs.
There was a political party, a third party called the Anti-Masonic Party at a point in the United States.
The Global Pandemic Treaty.
Conspiracy and Chill podcast.
All right, we got one I'm super excited for today. A YouTube channel you guys probably know. I've been a big fan for a long time. It's Old World Florida on YouTube, and this is Dr. Narco Longo. Thank you for coming on, brother.
What's up, guys? Glad to be here.
So, your work is very extensive, and it covers a lot of stuff, which is why I love your channel. But obviously the name, Old World Florida, somebody who might not be familiar with you, how would you sum up your work for the dummies?
Right. Well, thank you. That's flattering. That's high praise. It's everything unusual, conspiracy theory, metaphysical. You know, it's the old world, occult, esoteric, everything behind Florida, glorifying Florida, shedding light, uncovering things, and a whole lot of holistic health too. So, you know, conspiracy theories, truth, whatever you want to sum it up as. We talk about Jesus and the Bible a fair amount too. But yeah, the truth in Florida and how they relate.
Right on. Well, yeah, like I said, this is a guest I was very excited to have because also a fellow vegan. We're gonna double team Meat Eater Mike today here. Can't wait for that because it's usually him and the guest giving me shit. I wanted to jump on that live stream when you were on YouTube talking to some guy that came on eating chicken, and I was laughing at that. That was fun.
Yeah.
We're going orange juice for your special today too.
Well, hang on. Yeah, I don't know, Tom. That looks like yellow juice to me, buddy.
Not the real thing. We're here in Illinois. We're here in Chicago, so it probably is some GMO crap. But it was the fresh squeezed.
I'm only teasing.
We got milk.
But yeah, when you see that fresh orange, fresh squeezed color, you'll understand why they call it orange juice. But yeah, I love everything. I love the yellow juice too. I've got some favorite pasteurized brands that I like to use too when I'm in a pinch. You know, can't always get the good stuff.
What about pineapple juice? I'm a big pineapple juice guy.
That's good too.
Love pineapple juice. I love pineapple juice because I can guzzle it room temperature. Like, orange juice is amazing, but it doesn't have the same appeal when it's just like warm or room temperature, you know? I really like it chilled. Pineapple juice is like, if I know I'm going to be walking somewhere, if I'm going to be spending all day outside. Like, I used to be a valet. I used to park cars. Did that for like 5 years. And I'd run a lot all day and sweat a lot. And I'd always buy pineapple juice. And that was as good as like 5 gallons of water, you know, one liter of pineapple juice. So
it brings you back. Same with coconut water.
Yeah.
Love it. And before we get into this, because we could take this all types of directions, something that I always had that came to mind with Florida, like I'd only visit, you know, a couple times throughout my life when my family would go on vacation to Florida. But I don't know. You strike me as a bit of a metalhead too. Am I right to assume that?
I play guitar, so I really do like everything with a guitar in it. I definitely grew up on metal, for sure. A little.
one of the
grunge.
one of the niche like scenes of metal that I was very into was Tampa death metal scene in like the 80s and 90s, and it was all like super brutal, super heavy, like satanic, just dark death metal that I liked. And I was like, why did this come from like sunny Florida? This just doesn't make sense in my head. But as I would visit, I'm like, I don't know, Florida is kind of brutal. It's got like a bunch of invasive reptiles and like the Florida man archetype and all types of weird stuff around it. So I'm like, okay, I could see why some energy like this popped up, some just real occult brutal stuff. And once I stumbled upon your channel, it started to make more and more sense, and obviously opened up total other points of view. Got any thoughts on that? Are you familiar with the Florida death metal scene?
Not too intimately, but when I was in high school, there was a pretty big hardcore scene, and a lot of bands from my high school were touring around the United States, which was pretty cool. But never went to death metal in Tampa, but I went to some death metal concerts here in Broward County and Palm Beach County. Those are pretty brutal, but I would say, anything coming out of Tampa Bay is going to have to do with all the tunnels, and it's the sinkhole capital of the world over there. So that's Hades we're talking about, and Hades rules heavy metal. So
it's awesome. So if someone was listening to you for the first time, where or how would you start the conversation on your work?
God. There's God. God is good. God's real. There's nothing wrong with being a Christian. There's nothing wrong with being a holistic health nut. And that's actually how we were created. There's nothing wrong with smoking pot. And there's nothing wrong with not going to college. So that's really entry level. That's the conversation I'd have with anyone who came through the door here. Try it's working.
No, that's cool. I check all the boxes. So I was listening to several different podcasts, but a couple of the notes that I took that I wanted to talk to you about, since we're kind of seeming maybe starting at Christianity and the Bible and whatnot, is I heard you talk about the Garden of Eden and that possibly, or what you believe is in Florida. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Right. Yeah. So just number one, it's not a joke. Being dead serious. Some people think it's a joke, but I'm being dead serious. And I know for a fact the guy who came up with that, or not the guy who came up with it, the first white guy who noticed and wrote a book about it was E. Calloway. I know he was dead serious about it too. Restructured his whole life around it. Didn't make much money off it at all. And you've just got to look at what do we know? We know that Noah, or whoever his equivalent was in any world religion, faith, all around Eurasia. It's not just the Abrahamic faiths who believe in this Noah guy, or have a Noah type character, or have a flood myth and a survival and rekindling of civilization. It's not just the Abrahamic faiths. So whoever the equivalent of Noah is, pretty much everyone agrees he landed in Eurasia, in the mountains of Ararat. We know that some names were transferred there, but we don't know where he departed from. We don't know where they departed from. Maybe Noah represented a whole group of people. That's something that happens a lot of times in storytelling, is whole groups of people are boiled down into single people.
For sure.
For the sake of storytelling, for brevity, for the sake of conversation and dialogue, and this is what happens. So whether that was one boat that landed, whether that was a whole fleet that landed, we don't know for sure. People like Ron Wyatt have gone over there and done a lot of digging, done a lot of searching, claimed they found a whole lot of answers. I think there's a whole lot of truth to some of that, the things they find out in the mountains of Ararat, the boats over there, allegedly, the wood they pull off the top of Mount Ararat. There's graves that they claim are over there of bones that belong to 14-foot people. And that's some crazy stuff, but they have pictures and video and museums that you can go and touch to prove it. So I think there's a general consensus that Noah landed there, or his equivalent, whoever they would be, landed in Eurasia. And that's pretty much where world history picks up after that, is people came down from the mountains of Ararat, where it wasn't too hospitable. They ventured down to the area that we, remember as Sumeria and Babylon and those areas. And that's where you get, boom, civilization picking back up. But we don't know where Noah departed from. The Bible isn't explicit. Gives us names, but like I said, those were applied to Eurasia after the fact, which has kind of confused a lot of people. So I don't think anyone truly believes he departed from Eurasia. I think a lot of people just rest on the assumption that the whole world might have been reshaped by the flood, so there's no point in looking anywhere. And there's some rivers over there. Well, there's only 2, not 4, but there's some rivers over there in Iraq that bear those names, and people haven't really looked too much deeper than that. Well, some people have. L.V. Edison Galloway was Florida's 1936 Republican candidate for governor. And he wrote a whole book in 1966 about Florida being the true original Garden of Eden. Not only that, it is the southeastern United States, the border between Florida and Georgia, that Noah built his ark from a certain type of wood named in the Bible, gopher wood, that only grows one place in the whole world. That's on the border of Florida and Georgia. Right in that exact same vicinity is a 4-headed river system, just like that. It's the world's only equal 4-headed river system. And it's built like that, I believe, because God designed the human body. God designed this story so that anyone can tell it. Even if they didn't have a tongue, they could tell this story. Right? And the Bible's written. Another thing we got to remember about the Bible is it's written for the fisherman, the shepherd, the tribal hut dweller. Maybe it was written by people with pen and pencil, and maybe even a printing press. Maybe it was written back by high advanced technological people. But they wrote the Bible with the fisherman and the shepherd and the wanderer in mind. So that's the common denominator, right? We've got to meet them at that level. So if the Bible sounds dumbed down sometimes, or if it sounds very desolate and tribal, remember that's just storytelling. And they chose a certain setting for the story, but that might not be where those things actually occurred. So, blah, blah, blah. The Old Testament, Genesis, tells us there was 4 rivers in the Garden of Eden, and that the Garden of Eden was eastward. So Iraq, there's nothing eastward about where the 4 rivers are in Iraq. There's nothing fertile about where the 4 rivers are today in Iraq. They do not abound in wildlife or rare species or ice age species that would have been preserved in a special place like that. It's pretty much just a sandbox. The banks of the rivers are somewhat fertile, but Iraq is Iraq, right? We've all seen it on TV. Well, we've all seen Florida on TV too. And we all know how much money gets dumped into Florida, how much people really treat it like the Holy Land. And right, you've got a significant Jewish population in Florida, and you've got all these things. So L.V. Edison Galloway did some digging. He moved over there. I've told the story at length. I've done a whole audiobook on it. People want to hear every detail, but basically he moved to Northwest Florida, noticed this 4-headed river system, noticed Florida was an eastward landmass, southeastward, but definitely eastward. Noticed that the southeast United States was among the oldest land masses in the world ever that we know about. Over 1 billion, whatever 1 billion means, doesn't matter. Maybe they made all that stuff up. But as far as we know what old is geologically, this stuff is old. So, 1 billion can mean whatever you want it to mean, but by comparison, it's 1 billion years old. The Himalayas, the Rockies, are still growing upwards. The Appalachian Mountains, the southeast United States, is so old, it's collapsing down on itself. It's so old. At one time, it was taller than both of those ranges. So just to get an idea of how old the southeast United States is and how lush it still is, we're getting a better idea of what Eden might have looked like. What I imagine when I read Genesis: lush, subtropical, inviting, hospitable. Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, is one of the only places in the world where you can live without clothing. You can live without fire. You could live largely without shelter too. There's some places where you could shelter from storms and things like that. But it's got all the things you'd expect. It has all the criteria you'd demand of Eden. And then you have the undeniable geological landmarks, like the Four-Headed River System, the world's purest gold. That's right, in the Georgia Gold Belt, where one of those four rivers extends to, you find the purest gold in the world. That's the Dahlonega gold mint. The U.S. government used to mint gold there. It was so good because in Genesis it tells us there was the good gold of Havilah. Onyx stone, good gold, bdellium, all these things. And bdellium, pine resin, turpentine is what they used to pitch Noah's Ark out of. Clearly says in the Bible that they needed to pitch the ark. Well, guess what, guys? That was the principal industry of southeast United States, Florida and Georgia, for like 200 years, was tapping a little, like a nail into a pine tree and letting the sap run out and using that to pitch boats with. So the US Navy was pitching boats with this pitch, and Noah's Ark needed a whole lot of pitch. So we've got the gopher wood. Like I've said, people can see pictures of it on my channel. Big tree, super buoyant, only grows one place in the world. Gopher wood is a direct transliteration. It's not a translation. Transliteration, meaning gopher is how they said it thousands of years ago, and gopher is how they're saying it to this day. And another thing, there's the latitude. Callaway didn't incorporate this into his book, but you've got to understand the precise point where the two rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris, split or fork over in Iraq is the 31.0 precise point, 31st degree latitude, right? That line of latitude runs straight through the spot where this river forks. Well, guess what, guys? We follow the 31st degree latitude north. We follow that west towards America. Not only does it go through the Tigris and Euphrates, precisely where they fork. I've dropped the pin myself. Everyone can go do it themselves. It also runs through Jerusalem, the holy city of Jerusalem, precisely. Then it goes out through the Atlantic Ocean. And what does it hit? The first thing it hits, very first thing it touches in the American continent is Jekyll Island, Georgia. Got a whole video on Jekyll Island, Georgia. Got a couple videos that reference it. A whole lot of dark stuff went down there. Federal Reserve. You could even say that's the New Jerusalem. It's like if you flip the page over on the Atlantic Ocean, that's the first piece of land you hit. And that's where they chose to sign the Federal Reserve. There's good evidence to show that child sacrifices were undertaken in the precise location where the Federal Reserve was signed and drafted and conceived by a group of the richest men in the world under very, secretive circumstances. So, and then, you cross the bridge right off from Jekyll Island and you go down the road a little bit, and right there, also in the 31st degree parallel north in Georgia, is a little neighborhood town by the name of Jerusalem. Well, blah, blah, blah. You keep going west, and that same parallel that went through the two rivers in Iraq, not only does it constitute the northern panhandle, the state line of Florida, that's that flat line in the Florida panhandle. It is the exact point where the four fingers of that river, two of them terminate. And the bottom of that, the palm of your hand, if that's where these four rivers are, is the 30th degree parallel. And why they chose the 31st and the 30th is because they chose the bottom of the lake, the top of the lake. And from here to here is the border between Florida and Georgia. And from here to here is the border between Florida and Alabama. And then the border between Alabama and Georgia is also one of these rivers. So that's a pretty significant body of water right there. It's on the same latitude as the two rivers in Iraq, like I said. And then all the four things that the Bible says were near those four rivers can actually be found in Florida, not in Iraq. So you have all the animals that would have been in the Garden of Eden, and all the animals that would have made it onto Noah's Ark, two of every kind. Here's a nail in the coffin right here. If the horse was in the Garden of Eden, that's a nail in the coffin, because the horse did not evolve in Eurasia. Evolve, quote unquote, evolve, but it was in the Southeast United States. Any archaeologist worth their salt will tell you this, that the horse evolved in the Southeast United States. Its bones are all over Florida. You can go mammoth bone hunting, megalodon bone hunting, and horse hunting. Horse bone and camel bone hunting here in the Southeast United States, Florida especially. And you'll come away finding something every day. Horse, camel, lion, cheetah, yeah. Things that you think are from Africa, think are from Eurasia, came from here. The horse is the best example because the horse evolved, quote unquote, in the Southeast United States. Then boom, and that's for millions of years, they tell us. Again, quote unquote, millions of years, but it's there in the ground. Then it disappears from the geological record, the archaeological record, around the end of the Ice Age, around this big cataclysmic period. And then boom, shows up in Eurasia, fully prepped for domestication. So it evolved to the point of near domestication, independent of humans, apparently, they tell us, in America. And then boom, disappears and shows up in Eurasia, right in line with the timeline that Plato gives us for the fall of Atlantis. And we know for a fact they would have had horses, because everyone that came from them or claims to have came from them had horses. So
that one is the nail in the coffin. Like, I would love to hear some of my skeptical friends, like, who either don't subscribe to any type of conspiracy or think the flood narrative and the ark was impossible, that the horse thing, that really is one, because like you said, everyone agrees it disappeared from the fossil record, then somehow across the world where it spread out and was known for mainly is a horse ready to just totally be ridden and already tamed and shit. So that's pretty evident. And then the climate could really sustain anything, because like I mentioned before, there's so many invasive things. I'm super into reptiles too. Like I always kept pets and stuff, and I knew during like hurricanes or other things that like pets would get loose, or people would let their pets loose, or they'd escape from the zoo. So like there's so many populations of like different reptiles that are not native there, but they just thrive because the weather permits it.
Yep, definitely.
So you mentioned Atlantis too.
That's where I was going. Yeah,
Florida and Atlantis have to be connected somehow then in this timeline.
Yep, that's a great question. The Atlantis, there's John Saxer, who's a mystic out of the Tampa Bay area, Tarpon Springs, Florida, which is the most Greek city outside of Greece. The 1 in 10 people are still speaking Greek. They're fully Greek and still speak Greek in the home in Tarpon Springs. It's a sponge diving capital. So, there's some dead giveaways also, but in terms of the geography, just same thing with the Eden, Northwest Florida. But for Atlantis, I'd really like to focus in on Tampa Bay and maybe Atlanta too, which
That makes sense.
right. So those 4 rivers that I was talking about, if they're the shape of my hand like this, if we do like the rock and roll, right? The 2 outer rivers are the major ones that are like major rivers of in industry and trade, and cargo goes up and down. They're big, like on par with the Mississippi. Not super big, but you can get a lot done with them. The 2 in the middle kind of fizzle out, and where they fizzle out is the top border between Florida and Alabama, like I was saying.
Do we know the names of the rivers?
Yes, that's a good question. So that plays into this too. So if we're looking at this diagram, and I'll explain it for anyone who's not, maybe looking at the screen. You've got the main river called the Apalachicola. And the Apalachicola goes from the Georgia border down to the Gulf of Mexico. So if anyone knows where Tallahassee is, that's the capital of Florida. It's right where the panhandle starts to turn off from the peninsula, right? You're looking at peninsular Florida that goes down south. The panhandle goes off to the west. Well, right where the armpit is kind of folding, or maybe the elbow, like the elbow is folding, that's the mouth of the Apalachicola River. So if you see the bump coming down in the panhandle that almost looks like an elbow maybe, that's the mouth of the Apalachicola. Now right there in Apalachicola, we find some interesting words that relate both to the Garden of Eden and to Greek mythology. Apple of Eden, Apalachicola. Apollo, who's often associated with the golden apple, and many believe is the direct influence for the word apple, Apollo. Well, that feeds into a whole another rabbit hole, that is the amount of Greek, Hebrew, Phoenician words in the Southeast United States that don't belong. But they do fit in perfectly with this whole Eden, Old World, New World theory. But just, real quick, for the Atlantis thing, how do Eden and Atlantis mix? How do they relate? Well, the Greek mythology, which probably influenced this story a good bit, tells that, and this comes from John Saxer, which is why I brought him up. He's in Tarpon Springs, Greek city. Atlantis is a Greek myth. Well, he tells it that the word paradise comes directly from the word Hesperides. And the word Hesperides is the myth of the 3 daughters of the evening, or daughters of the morning, who are like these 3 goddesses of springtime, kind of fountains and beauty, who tend to this garden, and this garden has golden apples growing in it. And the Hesperides living in this garden, there's a snake in the tree in the garden, and one of Hercules tasks is to go and defeat a dragon or a serpent in this garden. So very close with the Eden myth, and the word paradise does come from Hesperides. So some Greek historians tell us that the Garden of Hesperides and the Fountain of Youth and the entrance to Atlantis were all in the same short, small region. Very, very local to each other. Now that all, points the bullseye right over the Southeast United States. You're talking about Atlantis and Eden having to be in the same location. Well, you've got all the Saxer stones in Florida. You've got the Greek population in Tarpon Springs, just like salmon returning to their spawning point. You've got this huge Greek population, Tampa Bay, and an even earlier population in New Smyrna. Smyrna is an ancient Greek city. So we have New Smyrna on the east coast of Florida. You have Tarpon Springs on the west coast. 2 big Greek populations. And Edgar Casey said Atlantis was Bimini. Bimini is closer to Florida than it is the other Bahamas. So it's essentially just a Florida island, right? And Bimini being a central hall of records for Atlantis, it's got to tell us something. That whole theory was largely substantiated when they found the Bimini Road in 1968 or 69. And Casey largely predicted that too. So he was pretty on the money with some stuff. I'm not a huge Casey guy, but Casey puts Atlantis here. The Saxor stones are here. Everyone's talking about Atlantis. Everyone's looking for the city of Atlantis. Well, hang on. This was a naval empire we're talking about. So where's the Navy? Show me the Navy. I want to see the Navy. I want to see the ships, the anchors. Cities can get taken over and, renamed, burnt down, razed to the ground. Anchors, those aren't going anywhere. Those are going to do what they're designed to do. Sit still. And the anchors in Florida, not only are they abundant, you have more ancient ship anchors here in Florida than places where they tell us real naval empires existed. So where's the naval empire that's responsible for these ones? Well, it fits in perfectly with Atlantis. Ships are going to wear away. Wood isn't going to last long unless it's small enough to fit under the mud, like a canoe. They pull up canoes that are like 8,000 years old all the time. Some of these fucking things are 40 feet long. You could fit 50 people on some of them.
Florida?
Yeah, Southeast United States. They're insane. Some of them are like 2 people wide. So you're talking about a warboat. You're getting close to. The Calusa and the certain types of Maya drifters were known to use sails. So we're talking about a seafaring people, and they've even got stone anchors in the museums, in Florida State museums. I've gone, snapped pictures. They're up on my channel. Pictures of limestone anchors in Florida museums. There's only one problem. As soon as they get larger than a backpack, they're not going to put that in the museum. There's nothing they can put it next to. There's nothing that they can tell about it. It doesn't fit in to the Smithsonian curriculum. It doesn't fit into the whole Darwinist human evolution timeline. It totally validates the Bible because big anchors need big people. We're talking about big ships. Noah's Ark was something like 500 feet long. And the anchors we find in Florida are precisely what ships of that caliber would need. 2 of these would hold an aircraft carrier. Some of these limestone anchors. Now there's whole documentaries. I have another video that got totally censored. It was like the 3rd installment of my Saxor Stone, Saxor Stone series. I don't know what, it got totally nuked, but doesn't matter. It, didn't get the same viewership that the other Saxor videos did. But in there is a super, super good clip. There's 2 good clips there. There's one clip where this whole National Geographic Discovery Channel team is out in the Atlantic searching for stone anchors. They find one that's pretty fucking big. And it's exactly like the ones in Florida. And they find one of these things. They spent millions of dollars on this vessel. They went out into the ocean. They were diving and diving, playing all this dramatic music. They didn't find shit. And then at the very end, they found one. And these guys, these full-grown men, were howling like kids, jumping and high-fiving like they just found, the next Great Pyramid. And they've made a whole documentary on it. We've got hundreds of those scattered all across Florida. I've made whole documentaries about them. And the mainstream academics don't do anything about it. But when they spend millions of dollars to go look for one out in the Atlantic Ocean, it's like cause for celebration. So very backwards. There's a sick element to this. There's like a gaslighting element to this. You can walk up to these and you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see that they have rope grooves exactly where the rope would sit to hold the weight in one direction. Like all the mass is on one end, and then the hole's closer to one side, and the rope groove is exactly where the mass would rest. It rests down at the bottom, and the rope would be hugging the top and slowly eating away at the spot where it's gripping, because limestone's not that tough. That's another thing. You find all holes, multiple holes. The rope grooves would give out. You see this in all, so many of them. The rope grooves give out, and they just drill another hole. Just use one right next to it. So the same anchor is good for 3 or 4 holes. And the way that some of them are disc shaped is a huge giveaway. But let's just zoom out here. We're talking about big, large, ancient ship anchors. Today we use iron anchors that are shaped like J's, right? Or like a double J, or however you want to visualize it, like a T, whatever, like an arrow, you could say. But anchors today have this unique shape to them. In ancient times, they didn't have that. They didn't need it. They didn't.
Wheel, right?
Yeah, it was
stone wheel.
Yeah, it was foolproof. The stone with a hole in it. Limestone's easy, it's soft, you can work with it, but it's still heavy and can, hold up its use for hundreds of years even, maybe. But there's Saxor stones all over Florida, giant stone anchors, and their highest concentration is around Tampa Bay, where all the Greek people live, and then New Smyrna Beach, where all the Greek people live. And the Gulf Stream is probably responsible for a lot of this naval activity. The Gulf Stream is like the major highway of the oceans, of the Atlantic Ocean. And it originates and returns to from the Gulf of Mexico. So, it's got all the boxes are being checked. And how does Eden and Atlantis mix? I told you about the Hesperides.
The Hibernians, though, that's where I'm excited to take this. The Hyperboreans.
Oh yeah. We was Irish.
we got a couple we wasers right here right now, and I believe I heard you say something to do with veganism and the Bible having to do with the Irish too. Because dude, the path that I kind of went on, being obsessed with every conspiracy thing, and also getting super into anything Celtic and Irish over the years, and it led me back to, ironically, Jesus and Druidry being kind of like the true origin of Christianity, not the other way around. Like when they were stamping out the Druids and the elders and stuff, they were actually killing off the original Christianity. And I know a lot of what you get into with the astrology, like the biblical astrology and the biblical herbal stuff and the veganism. And I mean, dude, you can't escape the Irish shit, the Hibiru, Hibernian, Hyperborean. It just gets so deep. I've rambled about it on this show before, but go ahead, take it away. How does the Hyperboreans fit into this?
Are we supposed to be vegan or vegetarian?
So, man, well, which one? Which one should we tee off on? Which question?
I'm sorry, I just kind of snuck. We could probably address mine later. Tom's is way more important.
Well, I threw that in there though too. He's on one of his live streams. He said the Irish fit into the veganism thing here, if I remember correctly. Which, yeah, I gotta hear that.
Well, there's some very famous Irish vegetarian geniuses, literary, geniuses, giants, and the Irish are especially loving of vegetables and are much, much less
no doubt
meat eaters than people think. And in times of strife, they, that's where you get like this whole potato stereotype, right? And potatoes come from America. That's a whole nother rabbit hole with, someone crossing the Atlantic before Columbus, because the potato seemed pretty dang familiar to the Irish, but Columbus had an Irish navigator.
Right.
So there's that. But as far as, diet, there isn't too much to say about the Irish, but in Genesis, man was undoubtedly created as an herbivorous frugivore or a frugivorous herbivore. There's no wiggle room on it. There's no gray area. It's explicit. Man's original factory settings were vegan, fruitarian, frugivorous, or herbivorous. God says fruit and herb bearing seed, that's what will be food. That's what will be meat for us. And the bearing seed part is important, but it also applies to a lot of foods like potato. And, you can eat, because this is a common retort that a lot of carnies will give, is they'll say, plants don't want to be eaten, or you're still killing something when you eat, plants or fruits. Now, I've run into that kind of low IQ retort a whole lot. And I wish people would just read the Bible, because it clearly explains. It explains adrenochrome a little bit later on, which is a big one that people miss. But it explains why fruit and herb bearing seed, or at least those type of properties, was important. When we eat a fruit, you're killing nothing. Absolutely nothing. You're doing exactly what the organism wants you to do. It is wholly mutual. There's no death, there's no decay, there's no stealing. There's no defense chemicals in fruit. That's another lie. I mean, the fruit makes itself taste desirable so that we eat it. That's a welcoming chemical, not a defense chemical. Fruit is the only thing, just about, some exceptions, that is tasty. It's alluring, tasty, visually stimulating, orally stimulating. Hey, wink, wink, guys. I think we all know a little something about that. But it's everything. It makes your mouth water, right? Now, that's our natural factory settings, original factory settings. You can't dispute that. Our eyes are made to see the fruit poking out of the tree. They're not well made for seeing the deer peer between the trees. We're not really good at that. That's why we need our scopes and our stands. We're not good at being quiet. We're not good at bringing animals down with our bare hands. It's pretty sad, actually. I grew up hunting, killed everything there is to kill in the Southeast United States. And there's nothing glorious about it. But, there's some badass stuff, and it might make people feel good, but it's not what we're made for at all, really. No human lusts after gore. No human lusts after blood and entrails or suffering animals. These are original factory settings. That's what I'm stressing here. And you can always argue where man went astray after that. But to your question, vegetarian or vegan, it seems there was no need for dairy at all. And I definitely believe that. Two, that's what I feel in my heart is, if there were a golden age, if there was no winter, there was certainly no need for dairy. But when winter came, it was dairy and grains that got us through it. So grain was probably not in the picture to begin with either. There wasn't a need for it. You didn't need to store food during the year. There's the fruit, there's the water, there's the beautiful woman, there's the shade. What else do you need? And something got complicated, whether that's a metaphor or not, then tilling the ground comes into play. After the fall, the mistake, the expulsion from Eden, tilling the ground. Then animal husbandry, then full-on carnivorism, and sacrifice, which was a slippery slope that we got ourselves into. And people point to certain Bible verses talking about meat, wholly forgetting that these are punishments. These are lowerings of the bar. You know, God never demanded the first sacrifice. Man made it to him foolishly. And from then a debt was created. A ledger was forged. And man has been paying a blood debt ever since. When Cain and Abel died, this is another mistake that people make. People say, oh, the first murderer was a vegetarian. Cain was the
gardener.
You know, exactly, the fruit guy. Cain was the fucking lame fruitarian, and Abel was the Chad goat herder, right? Or lamb herder. Well, or sheep, whatever. Well, guess what? They were both vegetarian because they were both operating under the same law. So the first murder victim was a vegetarian. So yes, the first killer was a vegetarian, and the first murder victim was a vegetarian. But you put those words together, Cain and Abel, you get cannibal. You also get cable TV. So
I never realized that you get cannibal from that. I'm slow. Wow, I'm behind the eight ball here.
A lot of people say the Canaanites who worship Baal too. That's where it comes from too.
Bingo. Good one.
And they
that's
were doing the same shit.
That's in the mix too. So we were created vegetarian, you know, vegan. I don't like saying vegan too much. You know, it has a bad connotation. It makes you think of some chubby girl with blue hair that's just a barista at Starbucks, you know. I like to say philosopher's diet. When you look at Plato, Socrates, Porphyry, when you look at the Neoplatonists, when you look at even Nietzsche, yes, sir, Mr. Cutthroat, cold-blooded, superhuman himself, vegetarian. You know, there's a certain guy born in Austria that they don't like to talk about. He was a vegetarian too. Some of the greatest opponents to globalism, Zionism, and blood sacrifice in general have all been vegetarians. Leonardo da Vinci was a vegetarian. Nikola Tesla was a vegetarian. Thomas Taylor was a vegetarian. The guy who translated almost all of these Greek works into English for the very first time, Thomas Taylor. You know, it's undeniable. Hey, I don't like Albert Einstein. I don't like him one bit, but he was pretty smart, at least somewhat. He was a vegetarian. So when you list off the number of geniuses, when you list off the number of high achievers, you can say the same thing for not drinking alcohol. So it's not just like vegans are better. You know, hey, cut out alcohol, you'll get a whole lot of those effects too. Let's list off non-drinkers. That same guy from Europe that people don't like to talk about with the funny mustache, non-drinker. Donald Trump, non-drinker. Nikola Tesla, not a drunk. He took like one shot of whiskey every day of his life, something like that, but he didn't get drunk. So you can say the same thing. All the ancient Greek philosophers, they didn't drink alcohol. Even the general populace back then, their wine was so watered down, only the total scum of the streets drank enough to get drunk. Only criminals stole the undiluted stuff from distilleries and things like that. So, you know,
Al Cool.
We weren't, Al Ghul, So we weren't drinking back then either. And Genesis tells us fruit and herb bearing seed. Why is that important? When you take the potato, or we'll leave the potato to the side. The fruit with seed. When you eat the fruit with seed, you're killing nothing. You're doing its job, you're doing your job, you're doing God's commandments, and you're furthering the life cycle. So you're actually creating. You're doing what God would do. That's why fruit is the food of the gods. Well, herb-bearing seed is the same way. There's a lot of herbs, there's a lot of plants that you have to kill to harvest, but there's a whole lot of plants that you can eat 90% of the thing, 99% of the thing, and plant the next 1%, and you'll get 5 back, right? You've got the potato. The potato, you can eat 99% of the potato, put the 1% back in the ground, you got 5 more potatoes. Pineapple, right? Not really seeds on there, right? But the whole thing is the seed. Chop the top off, put it back in the ground, and boom, you might have a couple pineapples. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Man has an instinct to partake in that cycle. And that's what we're here to do, man. Eat fruit. That's what we're designed to do. And if people can transgress all they want to, but it's obvious. It's designed in our body. We have the body of a fruit eater, top to bottom, through and through.
You ready to switch over, Mike?
You know what?
They drop the dead bodies.
The thing is, man, like, I'm an old man. I'm 43 years old, but for the last, I want to say maybe 5 or 6 years, meat has gradually not been tasting good to me. Like, I ate a burger earlier today, and I didn't even eat the whole thing. Like, I don't know. As I'm getting older, my appetite, my taste is changing, and I am strongly considering it. I honestly am. The only thing is, I have the main concern that I think most people in my position have, and that is the cost, you know? But from what I hear, it's really not that much of a difference.
You can do it.
Well, you know, hey, Mike, I don't appreciate you gaslighting me, bro. Okay? We all know when you walk in through the supermarket, meat is the most expensive thing you'll find. If I walk into Publix, you know, one of those steaks is going to be, or some of the seafood's going to be the most expensive thing. But I'm only teasing, but
no, you're right.
Black beans, rice, bananas.
And I love all that shit.
This is what whole empires are built off of. Dirt cheap. And, you know, to me, it's the cheapest option. And I think it's apparent that you can eat way more for way cheaper. Sauces, you know, you can do a lot with sauces. All the flavoring, meat is just a flavor sponge. Meat's just a flavor sponge. So there's other foods that absorb flavor.
And that's what you sprinkle your damn meat with, and seasoning and all these other herbs and shit to make it taste nice, because we're not supposed to be eating it.
So yeah, meat's expensive, and people think that you know, it'll be like a big shock to their you know, grocery bill, but it's definitely going to be the opposite. Maybe if you're buying certain things from Whole Foods, like, yeah, Whole Foods grocery bill will fucking set you back a while, but you can get away with good, clean living, going to like farmers markets and boxes of fruits, things like that. So it's easy to do. It's a little bit of a shift, but it's totally worth it, because wouldn't you rather eat what those big, strong animals are eating themselves, you know?
Oh, no doubt. And I'm sure I'd feel better too. I'm sure, you know, physically I'd feel better.
Yeah.
My dad, who's like 60, had a health scare maybe like a year or two ago, heart problem, and watched some, I can't remember what, like, infamous vegan documentary. There's a couple, but I was already vegan by the time those came out, so I didn't even really watch them, but I know a lot of people talk about them. What are they called again? Like Game Changers or something? Is that one of them? Some vegan documentary. My dad watched it and suddenly went vegan after he's been like the biggest meathead and beer drinker and making fun of me and shit for being vegan. But he did go vegan and lost a ton of weight and didn't have the bloated like meat gut anymore. And I can't believe he stuck with it, to be honest. So anyone can fucking do it, man.
Dude, for sure. I have a friend that I went to high school with, didn't see him for years, was going through his like town he lives in now on a road trip, and saw him for the first time in a while. And he was the last guy I'd ever think would go like vegetarian or holistic health, you know? But whatever, he got married, had kids, hadn't seen him in like 5 years. And then boom, run into him in North Carolina. And he got into it from reading the Bible.
Wow.
And he's like, yeah, because he used to be very religious. And what he realized was when you study hard enough, you realize kind of what we just went over was man's original factory settings were definitely frugivorous or herbivorous. But then also the whole blood sacrifice thing. I mean, how did man get into this complicated world with like crime and vice? And well, blood sacrifice is largely the currency that got us here, right? That all these transactions, these bad decisions were done with was blood sacrifice. Jesus, his number one message was an opposition to blood sacrifice. When he chased out the Sadducees and the Pharisees, he was not only chasing out the money changers. The word that's used in some of those instances is shambles. Shambles means not only money changer, like an insurer, a interest, charging bankster, all these middlemen and the stuff that's going on now. It was kind of simpler back then, but same stuff. Marketplace scams, right? And trimming coins, using fake weights because they scale things back then. So there were tricks that were being done. And a lot of these dirty tricks were being done in the temple under the guise of, well, if you do the trade in the temple, we're all being held to like this holy standard, right? Well, the opposite was true. They used the guise. It's like being in the police station saying, well, we're in the police station. No crime can be committed here, right? But we all know some crime happens in jails and police stations. So this was true back then. And when Jesus was going through and flipping the tables on the money changers, it wasn't just money changers. It was the meat markets. Shambles means money changers table and meat market. Why? Because the two went hand in hand in Jesus's day. You had the people who were running the finances and corrupt and pulling the strings of politicians. They were also the ones pushing the adrenochrome diet on people. So Jesus's whole thing was, hey, let's get off the adrenochrome diet, and then we can 100% make good decisions when it comes to God. And you'll have more of a sense of honesty when dealing with your brother in business dealings. And that's what Jesus believed, was that money changing and flesh eating went hand in hand. And the blood sacrifice was being done by the loan sharks and the banksters, just like it is today.
Exactly.
So, what's the adrenochrome diet?
Meat.
Oh, is it just meat? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
Yeah, any dead corpse that's been terrorized before it dies is adrenalized. So adrenochrome is not a human thing. I've made some memes that are like, like QAnon Trumpers, who I am, by the way, but like QAnon, like stereotype QAnon Trumpers being like, man, we're going to combat the adrenochrome industry. We're going to take down the Democrats and bust open the adrenochrome, save the children,
And they're the biggest meathead ever.
And then they're like, just jump, just chowing down on ribeyes and like bloody steaks. And that's adrenochrome too. People got to understand this. Why is meat bad? It's not just, oh, feel bad for the cows. Oh, I got to know this cow one time and now I can never eat meat. No. Let's be vegan selfishly first. I want to be vegetarian, vegan, no death, no corpse for me, for my chakras, for my karma, for my, the meat diet. It's said in Chinese medicine, like the Tao and certain ones, is what type of animals what you eat is what type of chakra you're stuck in. Your path to ascension. Now I don't always think like that. Like I'm not very Eastern, minded, but there's truth to that. And eating chicken and fish is a little bit less as bad, because the closer to us and the closer to our intelligence the closer that adrenochrome high is going to be to like a human. So human's definitely the worst. Don't get me wrong. Stay away from all adrenochrome, human especially. But we've got to remember, why is adrenochrome bad? Because you're scaring a human. You're terrorizing the blood. The terror hormones seep into the blood. And from there, the blood becomes a drug. One of the most addictive things in the world. We've all seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas references adrenochrome and its, recreational use. Well, the same thing happens with animal flesh, animal corpses. The blood it absorbs, has all the memory. It's like water. You've got all the, same thing you could say with like the anti-adrenochrome industry people eating meat. You could say the same thing about the people who love looking at like water cymatics and like sacred geometry and, if I say I love you into the water, I'm going to blow a kiss into the glass of water and it's going to have the imprint, the memory of love. And, you see this stuff all the time in these new age circles. And then they chow down on some ribeye and guzzle some blood. And they don't put two and two together that is the imprint. That is the cymatics. That is the snowflake uniqueness of the thoughts and your emotions being absorbed into what you're eating or drinking. So it's bad for health, but it's also bad for our soul. And it's bad for your karma. It's bad for the animal. And any potential justification for nutrition would really only be valid in like a survival situation, which is probably how it originated, or that's how survival situations originated. So it's either, chicken or the egg. Did we start eating meat because life got tough, or did life get tough because we started eating meat? The Bible does a pretty good job of pinning that down, clarifying that for us, but that's the adrenochrome diet. And we've also got to be careful that we're not confusing the philosopher's diet, which is fruit and herb bearing seed, things like honey, nuts, legumes, seeds. Oh, seed oil psyop. I'd love to get into that one. That's a huge hot topic. I'd love to clarify the seed oil psyop.
Well, yeah, I think that's where you're going with it. That's a vegan diet, what you were describing, not all the fake foods and the bullshit that they're gonna try and push on people as like a vegan diet, but it's really just Soylent Green or some crazy shit.
Right. Yeah, Soylent Green. That's another good one too. Like Soylent Green was probably made to terrify people about tofu and lentils, which are, dare I say, really good for you. Lentils are amazing for you. As long as tofu is not GMO'd, that shit's pretty good for you too. Look on YouTube, people don't like to hear this. Everyone likes to have their Alex Jones talking points. Soy boy this, soy boy that. No. You can call me a soy boy, but look in the mirror, you just might be a goy boy, right? If we're eating pork, if we're eating, things like this, way, way worse. So GMO soy, let's avoid that. That's terrible. It's one of the most GMO things ever. But there's bodybuilders who've eaten nothing but tofu and tempeh and soy products just to prove your testosterone's not going to plummet. Hey, I look like someone who spends 10 hours on the computer, right? We all look like our occupation. So if a lot of people are out here trying to sculpt their body into someone else's occupation, well, they can eat whatever they want, I guess. If it's all, vanity, if it's all just to make themselves look like a lumberjack or look like a boat rower, whatever, you can steal nutrients from whatever animal you want, whatever. But you can get anything you need from black beans, just as much protein, iron, spinach, potassium, magnesium. These are like absent in meat. but they're abundant in fruits and vegetables. So protein is not the end all be all. And I forgot what we were talking about, but seed oil is something people are really caught up on, this whole seed oil psyop. Like, oh, I'm seed oil free for a year. I've been seed oil free, this and that, whatever. And it's all just hogwash. This whole seed oil thing came out of Paul Salad Dino, who's a total CIA mind control operative, carnivore, pushing doctor who wrote a whole book about the carnivore diet being the number one diet. He's one of the number one guys he goes through all the grocery stores, goes through all these restaurants. He's closed restaurants down. He's put companies out of business because he goes into a store and says, "No, looks like there's seed oil in this. No go, guys. See you next time." And that's like next episode. What does Paul Saladino say you're allowed to eat? Well, almost everything he's basing it off of was his books that advocated pure carnivorism. He was best buds with Liver King. He pushed the Liver King deception. Then he never backed out of it after he got exposed. So he was also telling people, you eat organs, you eat like an orc from Lord of the Rings, you're going to turn into Liver King. So his whole thing, why he was putting businesses out of business, why he was attacking all these food brands and, acting like he's the arbiter of nutrition, it was all over seed oils. It was all over seed oils. And this whole seed oil scare has pushed so many people away from holistic vegetarianism and pushed them right to the factory death diet, which is carcasses that have been dead for like weeks. There's nothing holistic about eating carcasses. So let's just break down the seed oil thing. People need to hear this. And I don't know why, I don't make whole videos about it, so it's good to talk live.
Let's go.
I'm glad to have a chance. Thank you guys. Well, seed oils, total psyop. People should not be as afraid of them as Paul Salad Dino. He doesn't like that because he hates salad. He hates greens. He's the defense chemical guy. He's the guy who says, celery doesn't want to be eaten, bro. Don't eat it. It's going to kill you. For real, guys, we got full-grown men who are afraid of vegetables out here.
The cow wants
and
to
20.
The cow doesn't have defense.
Exactly. That's his logic. Is if you can bypass the will to live, you have the right to all the nutrients. That's his logic because he's a carnivore vulture, mindset. But basically, his whole thing was seed oils being scary and bad and industrial lubricant. And, hey, they use that in machinery. That's not food, man. Well, the main one that people should be aware of and stay away from, and I agree with, is canola oil. Canola oil comes from, it's called Canada oil. Canola oil is no bueno, not good for you. The way that it's, harvested is not good. All this stuff. So I would not recommend anyone eat canola oil. However, it's definitely not as bad as your grocery store butter. I can promise you that, right? And another thing is, it was only invented in the 1970s. So what were all the machinery running on before canola oil? What was all the printing presses and industrial, assembly lines being lubricated with if canola oil was only invented in the 1970s? Meat, boiled down, leftover bits of all the carcasses that gets boiled down into like a fat sludge, and they use that sludge for tons and tons of different oils, gun oil, machinery lubricant, everything. So for hundreds of years, the Industrial Revolution was thriving off of fat. And John D. Rockefeller, say what you want about him, but the whole world was running off of whale oil until he got petroleum, full swing. So we were...
He blasted out a little.
Huh?
He balanced it out a little. He did some good for the world to make up for
Yeah.
the way he fucked it up.
What's the only way God let him, get away with it? It was greater good in a sense, was liberating whales from our dependence on them for lamp. There was no electricity too, so that's another thing that helped, but it was mainly petroleum. Kerosene and gasoline and butane and all this stuff was like unheard of, so it was all whale oil. So whales live to like 300 years, maybe even longer. We're not even close to recovering from that mass kill-off that we were doing for hundreds of years with the aid of industry, thousands of years before that. So the oceans are going to recover greatly, and still are, from that mass kill-off. And if people would give up the meat diet, you're going to see the world start changing for the better too. And yeah, whatever. But the seed oil thing here. So seed oils are great for you. You can quote me on that, and let's throw away the Paul Saladino books. Let's unsubscribe from Liverchem, maybe, right? The seed oil scare was made to target people who just want to eat healthy. It was targeting people who just want to do the right thing and come away healthy. Well, it preyed on people's fear. It preyed on people's distrust of anything that's, in the grocery store. And what it did was it scared people into the most corruptive, degrading, defiling diet that there is. The real Illuminati death diet is corpses, right? The world will never know peace so long as there are slaughterhouses. I believe that. That's what I'm not grouping myself in with anyone, but that's what so many great geniuses have uttered and wrote down in their own, ways of saying it. The world will never know peace so long as we keep slaughtering billions of animals every year. The Holocaust pales in comparison to the daily slaughter that occurs in just the United States alone. So with the amount of blood pouring down our drains and gutters, the world's not going to know peace. People will come in and say, how are we going to defeat the Illuminati? With your dinner plate. You're never going to get a chance to point your M16 at, politicians and say, yeah, we got them. We got all the bad guys. Bad guys executed. Earth's good to go. No. It's the same corruptive, corrosive impulse, largely parasite-driven, to be honest. People say, oh, why didn't I succeed on a vegetarian diet? Well, your parasites didn't want you to. You got to knock out your parasites. If you've been on a meat diet, got to get rid of the parasites, or else you're not going to be set up for success. If you try to get off of meat and don't deal with the parasites, your organs are never going to be happy, because the parasites are going to be sending hormones into your brain telling you, you need to eat corpses. You need to have sex with transvestites. You need to, they can rewire your brain. You look at the insects that commit suicide by jumping off of tall places. There's a fungus that makes them do this. It's a parasite, that works like a fungus, that rewires their brain and makes them kill themselves because they want to reproduce in their dead corpse. All parasites want to reproduce in your dying corpse. So
how would one get rid of that parasite?
Right. I just had my pot dealer was just in here right before I signed on with you guys. And we were talking about, I had an onion out. It might still be here. I was eating pretzels, hazelnut dip, and then just an onion, like an apple. And I eat onions like an apple all the time. Love onion. And he was asking me whoa, you can take a bite out of an onion? And I'm like, yeah. And it still, it still has an effect on me, but the taste is amazing. It's like the taste of an apple with the onion burn, if that makes sense.
You eat raw garlic?
I love raw garlic. I don't eat that like with just bites out of chunks, like with a meal for fun. But if I'm feeling sick or under the weather, if I think I'm dealing with a parasite situation, which I haven't in a good while, raw garlic is like a nuclear bomb. So we've got to think, we all know the truth to this. Anytime we're approaching any subject, you already know the truth. It's either written in your body, or written in the stars, or written in nature. You don't need me to explain it. You don't need a book to explain it. Pay attention to our body, the stars, or nature. All the answers are there. And in fact, they're the same answers. You just might be best at reading one of the three. So blah, blah, blah. What's a good way to get rid of them? Vampires. We're all familiar with the vampire myths. The vampire has to be welcomed into your home. The vampire has no power over you unless you invite him in. And he can use every dirty trick in the book to get invited in. But you need to invite him in. What are his main weapons? What are his main opponents? His mortal nemesis? Onion and garlic. Onion and garlic. Now, onion and garlic are the number one anti-parasitic foods. Fresh, raw. They're good when they're cooked, definitely, but raw. That's a lethal dose to parasites. Here's another kicker. Gotta be on an empty stomach. You've got to hit them on a even, empty, clear battlefield. There can't be a lot of stuff for them to hide behind. You can't give them cover or castle walls to hide behind. You can't have a whole bunch of food in your gut already, because they can take up, residence in different parts of your body. So another thing with parasites is, I don't preach this on my channel a lot. I'm not making parasite videos and all this stuff. I only have one, vegetarianism video. But you can get very paranoid. Parasites impair your sight. Who was Jesus fighting against? The Sadducees and the Pharisees. Pharisee? Parasite? Pharisee? Pharisee, to impair your sight, to see. Parasite. Parasites are one of the biggest reasons that people go blind, because the colon has the same root word as your eyes, ojos. There's a Latin link there, but your eyes and your colon are linked. And when you have, butt cancer or like all this stuff, all these men, hey, you want to know what's the real soy boy LGBT nonsense diet? Whatever diet's gonna have a dude with a instrument looking up your ass for hours, that's the meat diet. That's the gay diet. That's the gay diet. The diet that's gonna have a doctor staring up your ass, that's red meat and pork and lamb, cow. Everybody knows fruit doesn't do that to you. Veggies don't do that to you. So grown men can worry about defense chemicals all they want, but what does our obvious ears and eyes, evidence needs to be evident. If it's not evident, it's not evidence. It can be proof, but evidence has to be evident. That's what people miss out on. What's evident about diet? Fruit and vegetables help people get thin and healthy, and meat and cigarettes get people thick, dense, angry, and in the case of men, it literally pretty much ensures you're going to get some form of ass cancer. If you eat a heavy red meat diet, go look up the statistics. If you're a man who's over 50, your chances of getting something wrong with your colon, rectum, or small intestine are through the roof, right? So that only comes from the meat diet. It's God's way of paying people back, I guess. But
that's a hilarious way of putting it and arguing in our favor. I love it. I definitely want to ask you ask a question off of something you said and kind of bring things back a little to some we was Hibernians. But first, you said maybe some people are better at reading the stars or the body or nature. So before we get back into some druid stuff, what would you say you specialize in the most? Because you kind of cover all three. I know you're big on the astrology, but where do you think you fit into that?
I don't know, man. But I'm okay at astrology. I'm an astrologer. I use astrology to benefit my life immensely. I'm not one of these like personality type astrologers who's like, oh, let me see your chart. And I'm a piece of shit, but my Neptune's in Libra. So this is very like lovey-dovey, feel good, self-congratulating, blue-haired barista, chubby, ex-girlfriend astrology.
For sure.
What I'm talking about is warfare, Chad astrology. Like, you can use astrology to get rich. That's not my thing, but you can use it to have a successful band. You can use it to better your life for anything. When you choose a date to do something, as a man, do you feel comfortable not having every factor under your control? You're planning for a day. If you could control the weather, that's like the greatest gift there is. You can plan your wedding. You can dump $1 million into a day. And if that day, or if your parade gets rained on, ruined. Money down the drain. It's not just money, but why leave things up to chance when there's a chance of not leaving it up to, randomness? There's a chance that you can notice patterns. Astrology is mainly association, pattern recognition. Any sailor, any fisherman worth their salt can tell you how the moon affects their occupation. It's evident. You don't need to be an astrologer to believe it. The moon's effect is obvious. The sun's effect is obvious. Those are the two largest lights in the sky. So we don't really get a pat on the back for recognizing how much of they influence things. But we should take notice and say, yes, the sun and the moon control much. But what about Mercury? What about Venus? You mean to tell me they, in quotes, mean to tell us they control nothing? They have no effect whatsoever here on the earth? That's not what I believe. And, I shouldn't even trumpet the devil's advocate too much because it might confuse people. It's obvious that the stars, the heavens control everything. The sun and the moon control everything. And it's therefore obvious that the lesser lights also control much. They rule over areas of life here on Earth, but to a lesser degree. Their light, their influence is a little bit more subtle, right? They twinkle, they sing. They're not shining, they're not blasting, they're not glaring, it's not a heavy influence, it's more subtle. So the sun and the moon are obvious. Like I said, this is written in your body. You have 5 fingers. These are the wandering stars. The 2 luminaries or the 2 palms of your hand, right? So you can go like this, you can bring them together. There's 5. So you have Mars, the thumb, Adam, man. Man is the species with a thumb, no one else. Pointer finger, this is the Jupiter finger. Pointer, Jupiter, Peter, Harry Potter, right? Jupiter is all the same guy. Thor, pointing the way, knowing right from wrong, pointing the finger, accountability, justice, right? The middle finger, fuck you. Saturn, Satan, satanic. It's the middle finger. It's the longest one, the tallest one, farthest from Earth, Saturn, right? And what's this one? I think we all know what this finger is. Venus, love, romance. Pinky, Mercury, smart one, educated. Smallest planet, closest to the sun, servant of the sun. So you have the 5 planets in the tips of your fingers. You have 2 luminaries in the palms of your hand. Lamp and palm are anagrams. It's an anagram, palm and lamp. This is where you do your, your shining. Like if you do like an aura reading, not like a new age one, but if you get like your biometrics like measured, the palm of your hand is like all your energy is pouring out of the palm of your hand. It's like, all your sensory nerves are here, super dense. So
yeah, that's what a lot of Eastern stuff would say about like whatever that, I can't remember what it's called, where like your foot has like a pathway to everything in your body and shit like that, that the sole of your foot is kind of the same way.
Acupuncture?
I mean, yeah, but there's something more specific for just the foot too.
Yeah, it works on that too.
Reflexology or something.
Reflexology, there you go. Yeah, acupressure is in that too. So we've got the heavens encoded into our body. You've got 7 chakras. That's the 7 too, from top to bottom. It's the closest and the farthest planets from the Earth. Just not a planet, but whatever.
Yeah, like you said, it's not just some newspaper or hippie fucking astrology stuff. It's more like the coding of our world and like the basis of everything on like a high up and a low scale level. And when it comes to like the druid shit, like I alluded to before, I was so against, religion and Christianity and whatever at a point, because my perspective was like, no, they got rid of, the Celtic pagan traditions and stuff, and they forced Roman Catholicism and the Roman Empire. Like, no, fuck that. But the more I dug over time, and I was like, holy shit, it led me to, being a Christian and being a follower of Jesus, but in a totally, unexpected and different way, that it was more of a like astrological and nature-based like practice at first. And there's so many connections to like the land of Ireland and the people of the Celts, but even when it comes to like the wise men looking at the stars and knowing that Jesus was going to be born and following that to, the signs of the heavens, like it even says in the Bible, or the seasons and stuff like that. So my thoughts too, and I've heard you mention it on your channel too, came to the conclusion like, dude, I think Jesus was a druid or like a Celt. You got Galilee, Gaul, Gales, Galatia. Like there's so much evidence to back it up through genetics and like archaeology. It's a hilarious thing to say, and like, yeah, Jesus was Gael, Jesus was Galatian, but it's true. In my opinion, I think it's true.
Yeah, there's great evidence to show. And the Hebrew, everything Hebrew comes from either the Phoenicians or the Scythians or the Assyrians or the Sumerians, you could say, right? All the people who preceded them. Well, all the words tell us everything too. Study words. English is a valid language to study words with. Don't ever let someone take that away from you. So Hebrew, like you said earlier, Hebrew is synonymous with Heber or Hebrew or Hyber or Iber. This is where you get Iberian. That's where you get the ancient Greek name for the Jews were Hyber or Iber. So it's Iberian. And when you say someone's Sephardic, you're saying they have Iberian ancestry. Well, guess what? Before all the Arabs swept through there, and the Muslims and the Moors, that was all Celts and Gauls. And, that was all essentially Irish people living down to the tip of Spain, living down into Italy. There's red-haired, red-haired genes and stuff like that. Well, then the Moors swept over, and, you get a lot of brown hair, brown eyes genes coming through. So now it's hard to recognize. But Spain was Celtic. That's why the script and the language they find over there was Celt-Iberic, right? They kind of call it that, which doesn't always make sense, but we were talking about Christianity too. I tend to err on the side of north down. The North Pole is not just the top of the Earth. If you're thinking, heliocentric model, whatever, it's the tippy top of the planet. But also on the geocentric model, it's the very center. It's the bullseye. It's dead center. And according to various mythologies, Finland or Scandinavia, the North Pole sat in continental Europe. So you could go there, you could be in the North Pole. And from there, that's where you get the swastika. The swastika and all of this astrological symbolism needs an unobstructed view of the night sky. The North Pole is the most unobstructed view of the night sky that you can get. It is, you get every constellation 100%, you know? So the North Pole is where all these astrological memories are coming from, all these symbols that are ingrained in all the societies around the world. Everyone's looking up at the same sky, but if you're over in Peru, or if you're over in Argentina, or the tip of Chile or something, you're not getting the same picture as someone in Ireland. The closer you get to the North Pole, the more complete the picture. And if there's knowledge in the stars, the wider your picture, the wider the knowledge. It's just one way to look at it, and the Druids certainly knew a lot. I like to play with words too, have fun with words, because phonetics is how we can learn all this. So I mentioned the progenitors of the Semitic people who would become the quote-unquote Jewish people of today, you could say, whatever. They were the Phoenicians. That's where they got their alphabet. That's where we all got our alphabet. The Assyrians, the Sumerians, and the Scythians. So the Jews got a whole lot of contribution from the Scythians, like weed smoking. They were a whole redheaded bunch too. Jews and Irish people are the two most redheaded people in the world.
Yep.
So that's one of the big giveaways, connectors between them. And they're not the same people, I'm not saying that, but they share an ancestor. And Scythian is the same root as Scot, Scotty, Scooty. And then Ireland is also Ari. They'll tell you Irie is Ari. And so if you're talking Ari, well, that's the whole Middle East right there. That's and Iraq, Iran, Ireland, Ur, right? Ur is Sumeria. Sumeria wasn't a word that they used, but Ur was. So Ur was this great city, this original city. Well, it was probably just an Irish colony or a Finnish
Literally,
colony.
bro. All four of those people that you mentioned as the progenitors, I was gonna connect basically back to Ireland in the way that you kind of just did there at the end, like Ur, Iraq, Iran, Assyrian, and like if it's the Isle of Aryan or Isle of Aryan, the Aryan people, like the Indo-Aryans, you could say that was the island that they came from and spread from there, kind of north down or west to east. If you weren't Irish, like the ISH, and you were more like like Argentinian or whatever, if you were from area, then you'd be Aryan. So it's literally even in the name. Or Iraq, Iranian, if it wasn't Iran or Iraq, also be the Aryans.
Totally. And the Assyrians, I tend to think everything goes back to Finland. Like Finland is the real North Pole spot. Ireland is one iteration of what we could call Atlantis, because Atlantis was also a time period. All the land is ice. All the land, ice. This was where we get the word isolation. Humans didn't know what isolation meant until the Ice Age, when a small group of brown-skinned, this is one that a lot of the Aryan people don't like to hear, because sometimes you get into this exclusionist territory, like, hey, I'm Irish, so I'm on team cool, or same way like the Jews might be thinking, we're Jews and everyone else is scrub, There's some worth to that sometimes, a healthy dose of that will keep your people alive and not willingly get you, genocided. But at the same time, there's nothing exclusionist about this. So every race has their talent. Every race has their factory settings are tweaked a little bit differently for the better of the whole world. And, each race suffers in a certain area, or a couple areas, or a couple areas. But, there's basically, when you go back far enough, if we're talking about a world without ice, you're probably also talking about a world without white people. Now, that's one that a lot of those like Aryan, neo-pagan, Northern European pride people don't like to hear. And I don't care. Yeah, the Stone Age LARPers who are obsessed with wearing leather and, doing their folk meetings in the woods of like West Virginia, like, LARPing as if they're druids from the Stone Age, whatever. But a lot of these people who might confuse this with racial pride, I'm all for racial pride. I'm all for racial purity. I want the white race to exceed its maximum potential. I want the black race to do the same. The yellow race and the blue race and the purple and the green race, right? But if they all mix into one puddle, that's no good for anyone. And it's actually people whose peoples have been already mixed into a puddle that want the rest of the world mixed into a puddle. And the people who are claiming to be the Hebrew from the Old Testament have largely mixed with everyone. And that's why they want everyone gone, because they've lost their purity. They don't belong to one of these great peoples anymore. So they don't want anyone to have a collective identity. So blah, blah, blah. If we're talking about a time without ice, we're probably talking about a time without white people. And white, the blonde hair, the blue eyes, was a reaction or a natural, factory settings for the polar regions, for the Arctic. Low light, less light, and a lot of cold. So thinner nostrils, because we've all had too big of a gulp of cold, dry air and know how that can hurt.
For sure.
Well, having nice thin nostrils helps with the cold air. Having thin, feathery hair helps with the cold and not getting too much ice in your hair and beard, And, having a beard keeps your face warm. So where do you see a lot of the beards coming from? Where do you see milk drinking and cheese making and dependency on the cow coming from? Finland and Ireland. Ireland's the most dairy-friendly place in the world. It's the most lactose-tolerant group of people in the world is the Irish. So that's another indicator right there. But originally, there wasn't one group of white Irish people that you could say, oh yeah, they taught the whole world everything. That's not the message I'm trying to say here. But after the Ice Age, a whole lot of brown people were stuck in the North Pole. Whether they got turned white, whether they were already largely European to begin with, doesn't matter. But they definitely got bleached when the Ice Age came around. And the hair got lighter, the eyes got lighter, and when they left the Ice Age for the very, very first time, it was white and black meeting for the very first time ever. So we're still dealing with that. It's like a hand grenade that God chucked onto the planet. Like, hey, you're all different colors now. Deal with it. But we might have had a one race situation, and I definitely don't say that in like a Klaus Schwab way. I'm just saying we've all mixed before. We're probably going to mix again somewhere down the line. But regardless, I'm definitely for purity and pride, and we're not mixing unless it's for everyone's benefit, right? Let's not let it get pushed on us for no good reason.
And if everyone's the same, then we are all just in some fucking commie dystopia slave race, and nobody wants that. Everyone wants to appreciate culture of all kinds. I wanted to say too, can you guess me or Mike's zodiac?
Oh man. Well shit, that might be tough. It's
from a short conversation on a webcam. It's right. Kind of.
Well, Tom is a Gemini name, so you can just start with them. So let's start with the name, so that I won't embarrass
names.
but I won't embarrass myself. We can blame it on the name, at least. Tom is a Gemini name.
Because it means twin.
Thomas means twin. There you go. Mike is, depending on who you ask, is either Michael, like the sun, like Leo. Leo rules the sun. Sun rules Leo. Or it's Mercury, because Mercury is the micro, the small one.
So you could stop on me because you just nailed. I'm a Leo, so you just nailed mine, bro.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
You're a Leo. Michaels tend to be Leos, or like the pride of the family. You know, Michael.
That's amazing, bro.
But Tom, you're not a Gemini, or you would have already chimed in.
I'm not.
My guess would either be, if I can take two, it would be Pisces or Sagittarius.
Aquarius.
Bullshit. What day?
February 8th.
Okay. Well, Aquarius is in between Pisces and Sagittarius.
Interesting.
Whatever. Yeah. So
you were basically right on the money then.
With all, in my defense, Aquarius is one of the hardest to guess. Pisces and Aquarius, once you get to the end of the zodiac, they're super multidimensional, very deep, and like non-present in the body. Like they're ethereal and spread out all over the place. But towards the front of the zodiac, like Aries, Taurus, those are like, guessing is super easy. It's like what you see is what you get. Aquarius is very difficult, absent.
Dude, I'm super impressed that just off of a brief conversation and my name, you were able to guess my zodiac. That's fucking amazing.
Well, I've had a public beef recently with a certain overweight Freemason who worked at Disney for a pretty long time, and his name, he came to one of my meetups. Little did I know he had bad intentions, whatever, but he came with a friend. He was welcomed. We treated him nicely. And then we walked around this cool spot in Central Florida. Well, his name was Thomas, right? And he has a pretty shitty YouTube channel that's just like AI generated garbage. So not even worth naming, but he was hanging out with us and we were walking and they put me on the spot and said, "What's his zodiac sign?" I said, "What's your name?" He said, "Thomas." I said, "Gemini." And he was pretty shocked. He's not a believer, and he was rattled. So I've done it to my enemies and they didn't have much to say back. I've said, you're a Gemini, and it was right on the money. And it wasn't just the name, the name's an indicator. And I always say, your name is your astrology. So even if I was wrong on the name, you've got Gemini in your chart somewhere. Your parents named you twin for a reason,
Sure.
How many of those books behind you have you read?
Not that many. I'm a quality over quantity guy. I've read most of the complete works of Plato, most of the complete works of William Shakespeare, the Bible a couple times through, and you can do a lot more with just those three than messing around with all this garbage and junk that's like one, lesser opinion, one guy's perspective. That's like universal truth, and it relies on astrology heavily. So that's why I gravitate towards stuff like that. I need something out of a book. I'm not one of these. I don't read for enjoyment. Like I'm not a reading for pleasure type guy. I need to get something out of a book, and if I'm reading, it's because I want something usual. So my brother reads a ton. He's more of like a fiction and literature guy. I run the bookstore here with my brother, and yeah, he just published a book actually this last week. He didn't write it, but he's publishing it. It's a compendium of 3 Neoplatonists who were pretty much all vegetarian, or 2 of them definitely. But it's Porphyry, Plotinus, and Proclus, and cool book. So maybe I'll shout that out. but that's all I have to shill. That's all I have to promote or anything.
Do you plan to write any books?
Yeah, I've got one in the works, putting something together about just, it's like my YouTube channel boiled down into a book, but it'll be cool. And we're also gonna publish In the Beginning by L.V. Edison Calloway. That's that book that the Florida's Republican candidate for the 1936 governor election. That guy, he wrote about Florida being the Garden of Eden.
Badass.
So we're gonna republish that because it's out of print.
Oh, and it just hit me too. Do you think back to the name like Erin, Eden? If you say Erin in like a hard Irish accent, like Eden, it kind of sounds like Eden too.
Yeah. Many languages are like that. Spanish, Indian. R turns into a D. When I used to do Spanish class, I couldn't roll my tongue. And that's another thing. Irish people don't roll their tongue much, and German people can't really roll their tongue much. German people especially have a hard time. But that's my heritage, so I can't really roll my tongue. And I would always do the R's as a D. I took like 12 years of Spanish in school. So I'd be doing a lot of Spanish, and I could never roll my R's once. Even though I was in like the highest Spanish class that they had, I couldn't roll my R's. So I'd always say it like a D. And that might be like some Irish thing, right? Whatever.
Have you been to Ireland, bro?
Yes, I have been twice. I was
Badass.
once when I was like a tiny little kid, and then another time I was like 12 years old.
Man,
11.
you gotta go back. You gotta do some of your work there now.
Yeah, for sure.
I went for the first time last year around Halloween time and had some fucking legendary encounters there, and I'm gonna be back there this year for hopefully like 3 months later here at the end of the summer and into the fall, and I'm just trying to sway everyone I can to go. So meet me out in Ireland if you want later this year, and we'll do some crazy shit, explore some brutal sites, and go full We Was Hibernian.
Yeah, I'm trying, man. I'm trying. Finland's on the list too, but
That'd be sick.
trying to get a house first, man. Trying to move into it. Fucking been living in my van for a little while. So
that's sick.
Van life's awesome.
yeah, I get to travel everywhere in Florida. I've been to like 44 states in my van, but just ready for a house now.
That's impressive, dude. So you do your videos from your van, or do you do it like when you're in the bookstore, or a combination of both?
So when COVID started, I got in a van recently, leased a van, still have it, but bought it brand new from a dealership, but making payments on it, but I bought it brand new. The best decision I ever made, because they fucking kiss your ass ever since, right? Take care of it, and I take care of the van, but whatever. So I've had it for a little bit, like since 2019, right when COVID happened. I was already planning on like moving into a van. So COVID came, I was done paying rent anyway. I was running valet, those who valet, parking cars and shit, running a lot, driving to work. I was just over it. When COVID came, I like built out the van fully and just started sleeping in there. Haven't really, done anything. I rent like an Airbnb in the summer sometimes. Like I'll rent like different, I'll do like what the SoundCloud rappers do. I use the SoundCloud rapper model. Like I know if I rent an Airbnb and I go live stream every day in there, like I can make back the money, that I spent. So it's like, whatever. But before I was Old World Florida, I just, at the peak of COVID, just went off and started traveling with my then girlfriend and went to 44 states and did a lot of just like camping out in the woods and shit. Grew up going to summer camp in the Appalachian Mountains like North Carolina. So I went there, went all across the U.S., camped in all these different, like just cooking, like on a fire. Like that's all we were eating, just cooking on a fire basically, and living out of my van. Went to all these different places, but I wasn't making videos back then. I was doing music. I'd come back to Florida and, park cars like during the season and then just take off for the summer. And I was focusing on music a lot before I started doing Old World Florida. Hasn't even been 2 years since I, started making videos or whatever.
Man.
It's like
It's
just about like 2 years. This is my second birthday.
You put out a lot of fucking good content, man, and consistently, like long form content. Because I knew it hadn't been too long, because I didn't discover it too long ago. But there's just so much videos, and you put out a lot of content that it seems like it's a lot longer. Fucking awesome job, dude. I have a YouTube channel, and I fucking ADHD slack so hard on it. Granted, I can't edit for shit, so it's mostly done on my phone. But that's
ADHD. That's a Jewish lie.
You think so?
It's a made up.
Yes.
Commie deception.
Let's
Every healthy child isn't good at sitting down and fucking staring at their homework. Every child doesn't want to sit in the classroom. Every child wants to stare out the window. They told me I had ADHD.
Me too.
They fucking drugged me from when I was like 7 until I stopped taking it, because I realized how shitty it was, how bad it was for me. Stopped taking it. Started hiding it from my mom. The medication they put me on, fucking Nazi meth from some laboratory. I mean, that's like borderline genocide. They're fucking ruining people's brains on a mass scale. They don't care. It's all for profit. Every kid, there's no food that you can blame that on, where you just say, oh yeah, 1 in 100 had some hyperactive disorder, and now it's 9 out of 10 have ADD, ADHD, autism, LGBT, whatever. They've all got something. So that's not normal. That's being over diagnosed. Totally. They get a check for every Ritalin, Focalin they prescribe. I was fucking like vibrating on this medication that they used to give me. Wouldn't eat. Like I would just like starve. Couldn't eat anything. It was, I'm not trying to, don't cry me a river or anything, but it was not pretty. Like it was clearly not good for me. So it's not good for anyone.
Have good results when people I know who get on certain meds, they always end up stop taking it because it just kind of numbs them out. And thankfully I was never diagnosed or medicated or anything for it, but I don't know. I feel like I have some sort of screw loose where certain things that everybody's good at or mundane tasks that I should, have a grip on are extremely difficult for me, and other things that are like stressful and chaotic seem to come more naturally to me. Things that are engaging. But maybe that's just a symptom of living in the slave system.
No doubt. I'm lucky that my mom didn't put me on medicine when they suggested it, but I wanted to ask you, so it seems like you've done a lot of camping, you've been outside a lot. Have you ever had a Bigfoot, a skunk ape, or like a wolfman sighting or an encounter?
Man, that's a good one. Usually I get asked about UFOs. Saw a UFO when I was like 15. And but let me think. Yeah, give me a sec. Like wilderness stuff, like any cryptids or anything.
The UFO works too. We don't discriminate.
What is the famous Florida cryptid besides skunk ape? That's just their take on the Bigfoot, pretty much, right?
Yeah. There's a real famous picture of it. Looks just like not just like, but it resembles an orangutan strongly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have seen that photo.
Yeah. That could have been an escaped orangutan. Who knows?
No doubt.
Orangutan, you got the word orange in there. And interesting, the Bach Saga talks about humans being a split between goat and an ape. Now that's whether they did the dirty or whether that was like a genetic, project, science experiment or something. There's a whole lot to show for that. Like the words we use for goats, kids, nanny, billy goat, right? Goat's milk. Those are all words for goats. They're all the same for a human. And then goat's milk is universal milk. Every mammal in the world can receive goat's milk. So, whatever. I forgot what I was talking about.
Cryptids.
Cryptids, thank you. I've never seen one, but when I used to grow up hunting, like I said, we used to hunt like boar in North Florida. And we used to go to this hunting ranch a lot of the time because they had like these prime, like a 5-star like trophy hogs, from like different countries and stuff. They were like hogzillas, that you see people like in hunting magazines and stuff with hogzilla. We'd go to a place like that, and like our dad would, see if he could like get one of these like prize trophy hogs, whatever. But when we were there, they would always tell us stories and like try and spook us about the skunk ape. These like old, just down and dirty, like hunting guides who just like chase boar in the woods all day. They get flipped over by boar. Like they run between their legs and flip them over, and they'd wear boots that go up like to the knee so that they could like get kicked, like a big razorback hog could run right by them and not cut their shins open. Because whatever. So these guys would talk about skunk ape all the time, and it was mostly just to like spook us, because like it was probably what they did when they had kids on the hunts to like keep them entertained. Like, yeah, I saw a skunk ape over there last week. How about you, George? And they're like, yeah, I saw one. And then we were like, 9 years old, like rattling, like petrified. But we'd go back into the cabin, like the main hall for like this hunting facility, and they had a fucking stuffed skunk ape. They had a full stuffed skunk ape, and they would swear that it was real. But it was definitely a joke. It was hilarious. And it was, as we got older, we realized it was like a big funny joke, because the beard of the skunk ape, it was a squirrel or a deer's tail, and his mouth, the asshole of the deer.
No.
So like they skinned like a squirrel and a deer together, like backwards and upside down, and filled the face and put like eyes and shit in it. And this thing was terrifying. It looked like real, and it was so believable for like years. But its beard was like a squirrel's tail, and it was the rear end of a deer was what it really was. It was the rear end of a squirrel, like fused together. But it had a face and everything. It looked like an ape. It almost looked like an orangutan. It looked like a gray orangutan. It was crazy. So that's the best I got, I guess.
Well, I know that you subscribe to kind of what I think, that aliens are kind of like demons, or the whole alien narrative is a little fake. So what do you think the UFOs are then? Are they like spiritual orbs of some sort, or are they just government craft? Right.
Well, not to get too self-centered, but the same year that I had a UFO encounter, it's the same year that I had a toad encounter. And the same year that I encountered this family of conspiracy theorists who really like nudged me in this direction. Well, I had an experience with a bufo toad. Bufo, UFO, UFO.
Yeah,
and a lot of people who take bufo say it's like an alien serum, like you go to outer space, whatever. But the bufo, what's another thing that UFOs are always accused of doing?
Abduction.
Abduction, but doing some boofing. Getting up and getting up in the back seat, coming in through the back door. So boof, UFO, UFO, I'm into words. I can't ignore those links. And I had those two experiences, not one of those experiences.
No
but no boofing experiences. But I had a bufo and a UFO experience in the same year. And my memory's foggy, but they might have been very close together. But had both my eyes poisoned with toad poison. They got squirted up because I was kicking toads with my friends, doing no good on the golf courses, the lakes, like all this landscapes, like land in Florida. They're just overflowing with toads at night. And we'd go out like little fucking rascals and just like punt kick, left and right and worse, we'll just leave it there. Like I wasn't a vegetarian back then, I wasn't thinking much stuff through back then, but.
So this was an accidental dosage.
Holy shit. Totally.
In your eyes.
In both my eyes. Stomping and stabbing toads with like catalog, like swords that we'd order from like, it's like Jeffrey Dahmer shit. Not really. Like I never an animal torturer. Okay, guys, listen, guys. I promise, I'm a good guy. Okay, we've all been here. Okay,
we've all been a piece of shit.
We've all tortured, not tortured. We've all
fed rats and shit to my reptiles for many years. Right. And I can't undo that.
Yeah. So this weighs heavily on me, but at the same time, it was encouraged by my dad. My dad was like, anything you kill, like bring it to me and I'll like raise your allowance. Like he was like having us hunt pests around the house and stuff. So, I don't lay too much blame on myself, but I would get out of school and like just BB gun everything in my backyard, lizards, like, anything. So whatever. That's what I was doing back then. I forgot what I was talking about. Again.
The toad.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. So certain nights, I think this one instance was actually prompted because one of my friends or my brother's friends' dogs either died or got hospitalized by these toads. And that was actually in our neighborhood, but it happened all the time, all over the place. These toads kill dogs like left and right. 100-pound dog can die from one of these toads. They can even kill people, if you get too much or something. We were kicking toads and like hitting them with swords that we'd ordered from like magazines, like fucking like movie ninja swords, like what else are you going to use those on? Not people and shit. So I was doing stupid shit like that. Airsoft guns, shooting toads with airsoft guns. That's what we were doing this one night in particular. And this toad, we were fucking, shooting a toad, and I was looking down on top of it and, doing something terrible to it. And basically it squirted poison, like projectiled into my eye. Now, whether that was like, it was like spatter, or whether they can actually shoot it that far. I've read online that they can shoot it outwards, but usually all you need to do is lick the back. All you need to do is sometimes even just rub the back of these poison glands on their back. Regardless, I got a fucking huge glob in my eyeball, just one eye. I started freaking out because we all grow up getting told by our parents, these toads can kill you. It's like mushrooms. Like don't eat mushrooms. Don't play with the snakes. Don't play with the toads. That's what growing up in South Florida is like. So I was panicked, didn't want to call home, didn't want to call a paramedic or anything. So we just ran to like a pool, community pool that all these neighborhoods have. Open bathroom, just ran in and started soaping my eyes out, like water and soap, rinsing my eyes. It got to the point where, and it hurt. It hurt. I thought I was going to die. I was having, thinking I was going to die. I wouldn't call it psychedelic, but I would call it near death experience for sure. Like thinking I was going to die, pretty certain I was going to die. Washed my eyeball long enough, realized I wasn't going to die. And my vision was pretty fucked up, pretty dang blurry, like real blurry, like milky, like film. Like my vision was bad. Like you needed reading glasses, like times 10 bad. In one eye. I didn't learn my lesson because either a couple days later or a week later, the same thing happened in my other eye. Because I was doing the same thing with my friends. In a different neighborhood, different group of friends, same thing happened. I got poison in the other eye. So the chances of that happening are like 1 in a trillion.
For sure.
And same thing happened. This time it was lake water. This time I rinsed it out with lake water. I didn't have any soap, but I knew what to do, I guess. Like just rinsed it out endlessly till it stopped hurting. And then from then on, this was like, I don't know, 15. Might have been 16. I think this was my freshman year of high school. It's like 14 or 15. And for a good week or two, my vision was so bad that I thought I might go blind. And I was debating having to just go to the hospital, like sucking it up and being like, hey, I did some stupid shit. You know, my vision's going away. But it ended up working itself out. I can see fine. I have really good vision. I played goalie in lacrosse, which is like, they whip the balls, like 90 miles an hour. So didn't have any problem doing that afterwards. But for a good while, good 2 weeks there, my vision was like scary, bad. What you'd expect from getting poisoned in your eyeballs. And that was a bufo toad. So it's not the exact one that people like smoke the venom, the desert toad, but it's the same toxins, and it's the same. It's a cousin. It's also a bufo toad. It's a cane toad. So it's also bufo, but it's cane toad. So they're like swamp toads instead of desert toads. I had a run-in with one of those same year as the UFO experience, like I said. And I think the aliens, if you want to talk about who the aliens are, they're Aryans. They're the people from elsewhere. They're the people who look like no one else, who showed up out of nowhere with different technology, with flying dragons and sea serpents and, floating cities that came down from the sky. What was this describing? These were big ships coming down from the sky. No, down from the horizon, from the far vast horizon with sails, like wings. Those are some of the dragons that indigenous people remember. Is dragon boats. The dragon carved on the front, big sails like wings, big belly, dragon shaped like a serpent, gliding on the water. That's what a big old seafaring boat would look like to a bunch of, hut dwellers. And those are your aliens. They're the extraterrestrials. Extra can mean extra, can mean more of, it can mean on top of also. It can mean above extra. So extraterrestrial means outside of or above extra. Well, extraordinary is to go above and beyond, right? Well, extraterrestrial would be above and beyond the normal land. The Terra, just in general, extraterrestrial. Well, we're all in Middle Earth. Middle Earth is like the equatorial regions. It's the tropical regions, Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, everything in between there. Well, towards the north, that's the extraterrestrial. That's the extra land. That's the Asgard instead of Midgard. That's the upper Earth. That's towards the North Pole. It's the bullseye, right? That's why they're all worshiping. All the Aryans are worshiping what? The bullseye. Aldebaran, the eye of the bull. Pleiades, Taurus. All this bull.
Sacrifice cults and shit that came out through Europe as well.
Yep. And
The
dairy.
Middle East.
They're
Yeah.
the dairy drinkers. No one else had dairy. Africans are lactose intolerant. Asians are lactose intolerant. South Americans are lactose intolerant. Yeah. North American Indians are lactose intolerant. Austronesians are lactose intolerant. Aboriginal Australians are lactose intolerant. It's obvious. You know, the gods have the big beards. And why are we gods? Yo, white people is gods and shit, bruh. Okay? We was melanated. We took the melon, then we ate it, and now we melanated. G shit?
Never heard that one.
No, just kidding. But we're light-skinned gods, not because it's this ego thing, not because it's like, yeah, we're the master race and everyone else sucks. No, it's because God comes from goat. And there's only two people in the world that have big, bushy beards. Original. White people, mostly, and, you know, African Americans. Big, bushy beards. And those are the two people who have God complexes. They're either both right or they're both lying, or one's right and the other's lying, or you know, whatever. But why are they both being likened to gods? Because they have beards. The gods always had beards. And the word God comes from goat. So you can say, oh, well, my creator's not your creator. You can say, well, my religion's not your religion. Well, regardless of what you're arguing about, we're all using the word God, and we're all trying to pin an identity on the word God. Well, why are we using the word God? Why is that the term that everyone's agreed on and trying to fill? God means goat. Goat. God is goat. It's where you get the Goths. It's where you get the Gothic architecture. Gods.
Gotland of Sweden.
Yes, Gotland, Gothenburg, the
Gottlieb.
Absolutely, all that. God is God, and it's a goat because God has the beard. So where did beards come from? They either came from the North Pole, where Northern European people come from, or they came from where Noah's Ark landed, because a whole bunch of bearded people got onto a boat and just landed there. So where did they come from? You know, that's the Middle East gets all its beards from Noah's Ark area, and we know that Northern Europeaners have the thickest beards. So follow the beards. Who are the barbarians? The bearded Aryans. Barb means beard. Go to a barber shop. Aryan is Aryan. That's the North Pole. Where are the two barbarians? There's the Barbary coast of Africa, North Africa, where the Phoenicians had their domain, Carthage. And then there's barbarians in Germany. That's a Roman perspective. Barbarians in Germany and Scandinavia, big bushy beards and red hair and blue eyes. And then there's people in North Africa who have a lot of those traits too.
Yeah, dude. As we're kind of closing this one down, this has been a fucking great episode as I knew it. And
no doubt,
we're definitely going to have you back, because we're going to need a lot more time to cover everything. And we could have taken this in a million routes, but yeah, this was a fun one. What I was going to say too, that I forgot to mention earlier, I feel like you were talking about from the Roman perspective, they made it a point to conquer and take out those races, whether it was the Gauls or the Germanics and the barbarians and everything. I feel like they knew, to me, like I said, with the whole Galatian and Druid Galilean thing, it's like that the Druids would have known Jesus was going to be born soon, and they were like preparing for the Savior to be born by the stars and everything that their, you know, nature told them as they were reading. And Rome knew about that, because the whole like Gaulish Holocaust happened just literally like a generation before Jesus was born. Then you got the slaughter of innocents, where they killed all the firstborns in Galilee and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, they knew that these types of people were like getting ready for a Savior to be born. So that's why they wanted to wipe them all out, and he ended up being born in Galilee. And yeah, I don't know, something about the bearded races, the red-haired races.
Oh yeah, totally something there. Muhammad had a red beard.
The Giants are always considered red-haired.
That's another thing. So it's the good and the bad is usually can be traced back to this red hair. Like Irish have the most red hair, but Jews have almost as much too. And the Giants would have had red hair, but Ireland has the most red hair in the world, but Finland has the most blonde hair in the world. In Finland, they almost have no blonde hair. Sorry, in Finland, they have very little red hair. In Ireland, there's a ton of blonde, but there's a ton of red too. Well, that comes from there's like a racial game of rock, paper, scissors. So you can pass like a skull structure without passing skin color. Or you can pass like a facial structure without passing eye color, right? So there's like these checks and balances, but it's also like a game of rock, paper, scissors. Like this cancels that, but then that can be canceled by this. So Finland is attached to Asia. Ireland is not. Finland has been overrun by various East Asian peoples throughout history. That's where you get squinty eyes in some of those Eastern European countries, and like a square face, like a more wide face. Well, another thing, and we can kind of close on this, is Finland is the homeland of the Aryan people. Some of those blonde genes, red hair genes, but the red hair gene is also associated with curliness and like springy hair. Well, once you take one of those populations and when they mix with East Asian, like the Han Chinese or like Mongolian, phenotype, when those mix, that red hair gene pretty much disappears. It gets overridden. But you can still have blonde, and the hair becomes pin straight. So in Finland, you see a ton of ice blonde hair and pin straight hair. So it's you wouldn't guess that a lot of Irish people, red hair comes from there too, because the East Asian gene can override it. Well, that can get confusing, and that's why Finland doesn't have as much red hair as Ireland does, but it's still the blondest place in the world. The same way Ireland works with darker skinned people. Irish are literally disconnected from Europe. So the East Asian people couldn't cross into the British Isles. So the British Isles has some of the purest white DNA in the world. But the Irish have been doing a ton of sailing. Columbus had an Irish navigator. What do we know from looking at the NBA, watching the NBA? Red hair can be passed to black people. And black and Irish mix pretty well, and they produce giants. The NBA is literally filled with half black, half Irish giants, many of whom who have red hair.
Some of whom are prestigious Freemasons. May not have the red hair though.
Right. Shaquille O'Neal.
Exactly.
Irish giant. I mean, people think like he's some African, circus performer. No. He's an Irish giant. Like his height is perfectly in line with Irish history.
Yep.
So
much giant lore there too.
Yeah.
This was awesome, dude.
Good to have you back, brother.
Yeah. Let everybody know again just where they could find you, because I'm sure, people are going to want to do some deep dives on you, brother.
Old World Florida on YouTube. Old World Florida on Instagram. I've got a Twitter and a Rumble. I think the Rumble might be Old World FL. Got a Patreon too. Yeah, that's it. We go live on Sundays, talk the Bible. Go live on Thursdays sometimes too. Do a lot of shows like these, usually on Mondays, like Keep Free. The bookstore is closed. You can come to the Dancing Elephant bookstore in Palm Beach County, Florida. You might catch me working here if you come in. But my brother just released a book too, like I said, so that's galloglassbooks.shop. We've got a book. If you want to get it early, it's only like $50. It's three books in one, so it's 800 pages. So you're getting 3 books in one. So the price is proper for the content. And my brother worked really hard on that. So if anyone wants to get those, that's a good, it's pertinent to everything we're talking about today. Like,
and surely that name, he took it from the Irish Scottish mercenaries, the Galaglass. No.
Yes.
Brutal.
Yes. Yeah. That's our heritage, is Scotch Irish Highlanders and stuff like that. So
badass.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on, bro.
Yeah, take it easy, brother. Have a great night. Sorry we kept you up so late, dude.
Oh, you're good, man. I sleep very little. I'm one of these. I'm one of these Trump Tesla cases. Like I don't drink at all. I don't take any tea or coffee, so I don't need much sleep. Like I can 4 hours, 4.5 hours. 6 is like oh man, I slept in like 6 hours. So I'm gonna be up editing some primo content. You guys asked how I get a lot of stuff out. I don't have a job that I don't like doing. I stay up doing what I love, and when I wake up, I've been blessed. Talent and my passion, I guess, are the same thing. When I wake up, I just want to grab my laptop and keep working. It's the last thing I do before I go to sleep. And I hope that shows, and I'm still getting better. Still getting better, so stay tuned, everyone.
Hell yeah, man.
But
great to have you on.
Thanks, guys. Tom, Mike, had a blast. Thanks. All the blessings. Wish your podcast well. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. All right, so that was Dr. Narco Longo. Man, he's impressive. And that was super awesome. That was really fun.
He killed it.
Yeah.
I knew he was going to. I knew this was going to be probably one of our longest ones yet, and justifiably so, because his work is dense.
Yeah, he dropped so much knowledge, dude. And I have been playing with the idea of going, vegan or vegetarian, but he really lays the case out for it and makes me. I know he wasn't trying to make me feel this way, but it was just the way he explained it makes me feel dirty. You don't know because you're not, but you understand.
Well, I know because I did the transformation. I was a meat eater at a time too.
Oh, yeah, really, and yeah, I don't know, the way he lays it out, dude, makes a lot of sense. Smart guy, and
I'm here to help you in the transition.
Yeah, I'll be definitely leaning on it, dude. I wanted to say to him, I was like, dude, it's super impressive that you were able to stand for like 95% of this.
I know, he's always standing on his live streams.
Man, that's impressive, dude. He seems like a really down-to-earth, cool guy. I mean, obviously, seems like he was for the 2.5 hours. He was really chill.
Definitely, he's a van man. It was a blessing to have him on the show because he has been a legend on YouTube in his short time making videos.
It seems like I listened to him for the first time I ever heard him was on the Higher Side Chat, and it seemed like it was many years ago, but maybe that was before he was putting out content, something like that. But yeah, dude, this was kind of cool the way this one came together for me, because Tom was like, yeah, we got this guy, and it was someone that I had on the wish list, and then I was like, oh, he's this guy. I was like, oh, like, holy fuck, it's this guy. So yeah, it worked out, dude. I ain't gonna lie, bro. There was times that I was genuinely lost when you guys were going back and forth. So like I'm trying to keep up because you guys are just so like, I don't know, he would say like a bunch of gnarly things, and then you would come right back with the da 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 da, and I'm like, okay, I'm like retarded here.
I wouldn't say that. I think him and I were just specially dialed in because it's the same thing other times with certain guests that you're more familiar with what they're talking about. But yeah, that's part of the reason why I wanted to get him on here is I know that him and I are on the same page on certain things, and anyone out there too, I feel the need to clarify, even though we brutally shouldn't have to if you do your own research, talking to all the Aryan things and shit. Aryan means honorable. It has nothing to do with race or anything, actually. Like Aryan or Indo-Aryan is like a group of people when we're talking about like, genetics and populations, and the Indo-Aryans were all over like the Middle East, India. It's like a progenitor of a race of people that were supposedly some of the first to domesticate horses, to get the the lactose tolerance gene of being able to eat dairy, of having facial hair and all this stuff. And that's what we're talking about too. And just, you know, you could maybe even sub it in for Atlantean or Irish, Iraqi, Iranian, Urian type of deal. So nobody think we're going with some Nazi ideology here and confuse what we're trying to talk about. That's just how they scapegoat you away from certain things.
I like how he literally talked about so many things that are interesting to me. Like he went from Edgar Cayce. We touched on the Garden of Eden. But the Garden of Eden, dude, I particularly like that shit. And I'm not going to lie. When I laid the question out there, of course, you know, I am always open for my mind to be changed. Now, I just always assumed that the Garden of Eden was where everybody else did in Mesopotamia, in that area. Okay, Mount Ararat, that's where the ark came to a rest, right? So
well, you got to think too, if that's just where the ark crashed, that Eden could have been anywhere. If he was drifting around forever, yeah.
But I never thought about that. And to be honest with you, like when I was proposing the question, I thought, okay, like this is one, of course I'm open for my mind to be changed, but I really didn't think there was a chance at it being changed, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? But after him laying it out there, it really, I mean, there's a lot of things that really do line up. You know, there's a lot of things. The conversation went in so many directions that I asked him for the names of the 4 rivers, and he only got one out. But I mean, I'm sure I could look it up and find it. But yeah, I mean, he laid that case out beautifully, you know, all off the top of his head. Impressive.
He is the Florida savant.
Do you know why he named it Old World Florida? I was going to ask.
It's because a lot of his work surrounds, you know, Tartaria type of stuff, like old world civilization of Florida, or the architecture, or, you know, the tribal history of the Native Americans, who they connected with, the, you know, archaeology of the area, like the stone stuff he was talking about, the history of giants, the different people who've inhabited it. Just, it's all very Florida centric.
We didn't even get into Tartaria. I mean, that's how, I mean, there's so many things. We didn't even
have them back.
Yeah, no doubt. Remember I said I wanted to talk about the fucking Fountain of Youth too. We didn't even, right. I mean, I'm not disappointed because the conversation we had was fucking amazing. I'm just I'm eager to have him back already so we can have another fucking 2.5 hour conversation, you know?
All right, dude. Yeah, he's gonna be a returning guest.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I was surprised to find out that he's only got about 57,000 subscribers on YouTube. Not that 50, okay, listen, we have like 104, so I'm not talking shit. All I'm saying is I thought that he would be bigger because his content is excellent, so I figured you
kind of have to be smart and open-minded though to fucking
true
interact with it. Otherwise it's just like, oh, what's this bullshit? And you know, he'll grow.
Dude, the Zodiac, he fucking, the first thing out of his mouth was, yeah, Leo. I was like, oh wow. He nailed that. Like, that was crazy, bro. And then with you, he was right in the middle. Like, you know? Yeah. Or you were in the middle of the two that he said? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just off of a name and a couple hour conversation. That's super impressive.
There's something to it. Just not in the fucking newspaper fucking hot topic way.
Yeah. I know we've said this before because we've had a few guests on. I think Brandon Kroll, and now this gentleman with the gematria or with the language thing, that, you know, what they're very good at these words. Yes, this wordplay. We gotta try to find someone who is an expert in that field, because I love that shit. And that's one that I never really looked into or put much thought into, and it was so stupid. It was so dumb of me because I just never even, I don't know, for whatever reason, I never just put much thought or effort into it. And then listening to Jordan Maxwell, listening to you, listening to Matt Slap, listening to Dr. Narco Longo, like, dude, it's everything. It's literally everything.
It's the coding.
Yeah. No doubt.
It's like astrology is kind of the same thing.
Yeah, astrology is like the universe coding.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate all the love and support. Keep it up. If you guys want to help the show, you could give us a 5-star review. You could like us on YouTube. You could subscribe. You could do all that good shit. You could follow us at all the social medias at Two Truth Seekers. You could follow myself at Sawbuck Mike. You could follow Headhunter Higgins at Headhunter Higgins. Do all those things. It really does help. You can also become one of the very first members of the Conspiracy and Chill Syndicate on Patreon. And if you want to help out the show, you can press that little support button on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and you can help out for as little as $3 a month. Help us take this thing to a new level and to a point where Tom and I can do this full time.
Don't you guys want to hear us more?
That would be amazing. I guess just stay away from pedophiles.